Hi everyone and welcome back to Artful. In this week's tutorial we're going to be using our brand new soft pastels and I'll be showing you how I drew one of my favourite things, which is of course food. So crack open your pastel sets and I'll talk you through it. So I'm sketching out the basic shape of the cooking pot in one of the light brown pastels. The studio in which I film in is very warm, so I must have had food on the mind when I was thinking of this tutorial, so excuse how hungry I seem to have gotten when planning this video. When you're drawing out these initial shapes, try and see it in the way that you would see drawing these light pencil shapes that you then draw over with, say, paint or a fine liner. You're essentially drawing the basic constructions quite lightly and then working into them later with the darker colours. Now I've drawn the basic shape of the pot, I can add some shadow on the side of the pot that the light isn't hitting it. And I can start to draw the details of the pot's lid as well, with the same shadow and the same direction for the light. I'm using a grey pastel to draw the line of the table so our cooking pot isn't just floating around in a white void. I'm using one of our light yellow pastels to draw the shape of the ramen coming out of the cooking pot. If there's one thing I love more than drawing, it's probably carbohydrates. Here I'm using a dark brown pastel to draw the chopsticks fishing the ramen out of the cooking pot, and using a light green to give the hint of vegetables in the broth down below. Not too many vegetables though, I hope. That light yellow pastel that I used for the ramen before isn't popping the way I'd like it to, so I'm adding a bit more texture and a bit more depth to it with a lighter brown, because the light yellow is kind of washed out in the white background and I want a bit more detail to come through in the composition. The pot that I'm drawing from has a metallic, almost coppery consistency, so I'm adding a bit more detail and a bit more depth to the pot with a darker green. This is just to help it look a bit more like a textured, weathered metal. You'll see that I'm adding some dark blue on top of the green shadow. What's great about these pastels is how you can blend colours together. And you can either do that by just stacking the colours on top of each other like I'm doing now, or by blending them with your fingers or a blending pencil, as you'll see later. I'm using the light grey and I'm holding the pastel very loosely just so I can get the sense of the steam coming from the ramen. I'm not a big fan of cold noodles, so I wanted to look piping hot. Again, that light grey kind of fades into the background a little bit more and I want it to pop more in the composition, so I'm outlining it a bit with the darker grey. I've added a little shadow underneath the pot just so it looks like it's actually there. Often with art, it's these little details that help to sell the illusion. Now it's time for what I consider one of the really fun bits, which is just adding a lot of flat colour that you can blend into some dark colours as you go. So I'm adding a lot of yellow for the background. I want this image to be quite poppy and quite in your face, so I want lots of bright colours. And then you'll see I'm starting to blend in the orange, and later the darker red. You'll see how I'm using my fingers to blend the colours together. I'm using the darker grey just for the final little touch-ups on the pot, and then blending some of that line work together with one of the blending pencils. The thing about pastels is because it's a dry medium, you can kind of just keep working into it if you like. So you could do the very beginning of this tutorial, leave it for a little bit and then come back to it later. When you're finished with your image though, unless you've left it safe and somewhere it's not going to be touched, you can fix the image so the pastel dust is not going to move around. You can use an expensive art fixative, but you can also use something like hairspray, but I will say that when you use the spray, it often darkens the colours of the pastel image. And there we go, a nice soft pastel cooking pot. This took me around 20 minutes to create in total, and I don't know about you, but I'm now very hungry. I hope you enjoyed this introductory tutorial showing how to use your soft pastels. I feel like people are a bit wary of soft pastels, the texture feels a bit different, you don't know how to blend the colours or to stack them, but I hope this shows just how effective they can be and encourages you just to give them a go. Let me know in the comments down below how you got on drawing your own cooking pot, or if there's just any of the techniques or processes that you'd like us to cover. If you did follow along to this tutorial, please let me know. Type me on Instagram at ArtfulBox. It might make me a bit hungry to see all these cooking pots come into my Instagram feed at the same time, but trust me, I absolutely love to see people having a go at these videos. If you did enjoy this video, then like and subscribe to see some of our earlier ones, and why not treat yourself and visit artful.co.uk. Next week we're going to be using our pastels again, and I'll be talking you through how to draw a face and making a self-portrait. You're not going to want to miss it. Thank you very much again for watching, and I'll hopefully see you soon.